Hello, hello. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am the host, Mandie. On Mondays, I like to share interviews of inspiring people who have leapt from their comfort zones to hopefully enrich their lives and change other lives in the process. This week, I have Hemad Fadaifar, who is an entrepreneur in Milwaukee who has a little bit of street cred on calling himself the most interesting man in the world. He used YouTube and his unibrow, well, former unibrow, to get a grant to go on an amazing trip of a lifetime. Actually, pretty much 3 trips of a lifetime, and he has amazing stories to tell about it. Without further ado, here's Hemad Fadaifar. But before that, I guess there is a little bit of ado. Can you say it that way? Anyway, there's a bit of ado because you want to make sure you listen till the end because I have an amazing group of prizes for you. If you follow me on my blog, you might have seen a recent post or a recent Facebook Live video where my fiance and I talk about how he proposed to his groomsmen. He gave them a pretty sweet box of gifts, and I was lucky enough to get an extra one for a lucky listener. So stay tuned until the end so that you can hear about how you can win some awesome treats and prizes. All right, now for real, without further ado, here's Hemad Fadaifar. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I am here with Hemad Fadaifar, who is here for the 3rd time because of technical difficulties. So I really appreciate that. And I apologize if we seem too smooth because Hemad might know what to expect if he remembers from the last interview. But the reason why he is on is because he has experiences and qualifications that make him one of the most interesting men in the world, as well as an aspiring, interesting man. So Hemad, why don't you tell us your story and why I would be claiming you're so interesting?
Sure. Well, either way, I'm humbled, so thank you. I think what you're alluding to is this big competition that I was fortunate enough to somehow weasel away and win. It was a company from the beer, or it was a contest from the beer company Dos Equis, and I'm a big fan of Dos Equis. Their beer is good, but I'm a even bigger fan of their advertising and marketing and their branding. So I followed them on social media, and I came across this $25,000 Stay Thirsty grant that they were offering. Okay. And basically, whoever submitted a video explaining what they would do if they were to win this $25K would be in the running of winning it. And Dos Equis and whomever they were working with selected 3 finalists. This is a big nationwide competition. And then it was a voting process and all that good stuff. And so I came across this and I was like, obviously I'm going to apply for this, because ever since the Dos Equis commercials, that guy is like my idol. Like, the most interesting man in the world is my idol. Who doesn't want to become the most interesting man in the world? So I always say I'm the most interesting man in the world in training. And I'm trying to aspire to be him. So I was like, this is the right step in the right direction, winning this contest. So I submit a video explaining what I would do if I were to win the $25K. And that process was interesting because you don't want to do something that's, I don't know, that anyone would do. You know, like, I wanted to go to South America and like just explore, but that's not interesting. You know, I could do that on my own. What's it gonna be to catch their eye? And so I was on the phone with my brother and we were rattling off things like, what would the most interesting man in the world do? Like, what would he do with $25K? And we went through a lot of scenarios and things like that. And eventually I came to the conclusion that it would be a good idea if I broke one of the Guinness Book of World Records and like tied it in somehow with Dos Equis. That was the original idea. Like, okay, let me summit a mountain and like chug a beer the fastest anyone ever has at the highest altitude on land. Like that was the original. Yeah, exactly. I was like, because thinking of it is fun and cool and like, oh, that's a good idea. but then I have to actually go do it if I win. So I don't know about that. So we just went back and forth, and eventually we stumbled upon doing something to challenge and test the limits of your mind, body, and soul. Because what is more interesting than growth and pushing yourself to your limits?
Well, you're on the Bold Moves podcast, so that's what it's all about.
Exactly. So we came up to like mind, body, and soul, and then we just talked about like, all right, how would you test your body? How would you test your soul? How would you test your mind? And so I submitted a video explaining what I would do, and Dos Equis calls me back, and they're like, "We loved your video," and I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay, I love you guys for loving." And I'm like, "Okay, so now what?" They're like, "Well, we want to move you on to the finals. Okay, like you're now a finalist." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And they're like, "We're gonna choose 2 other people that have submitted a video, and then we'll just keep you in the loop, and so you can figure out what to do next." I'm like, all right. So after that phone call, I'm just like, "Oh my God, like what? This could happen." And they call me back a week later, and they're like, "Okay, we have all the finalists, and now it's going to open up to a public vote around the world. And whoever's video gets the most votes internationally for the next 3 weeks will win." So they're like, promote it, get your friends to vote, blah, blah, blah. And this is at the very core of promotion for Dos Equis. So it makes sense, Anyway, I went on a marketing, like voting campaign. I felt like I was running for office. I mean, I called in all the favors, and like my rugby team came through, and all my friends, and like everybody. So
3 weeks is a long time for that.
I know. I literally feel like I was about to be mayor. I was like, I can't not win. But,
any political aspirations in the future?
No, not in the near future. So I'm like, okay, I've done everything I can. 3 weeks later, and they were tallying up the votes, and I got a phone call 3 weeks later, and they were like, "Hemad, we don't know if you hacked into the system or what, but you won by a landslide." And I'm like, "What?" I just couldn't believe it. And they were so happy because my video was kind of funny, and I'm sure you'll link up the video and stuff to my submission video. But it was my personality came through, and I just really wanted to like hit home with. It was funny. I was making fun of myself and blah blah blah. You'll see. So they're like, "You win, and we're so happy that you won because you really capture the Dos Equis spirit."
You're like, so that's my life mission.
You guys don't know, but I'm gonna be the most amazing man in the world in your commercials. So you guys don't know that yet.
Hang on to my phone number.
Exactly. Call my people. So this is what I said I would do. I said that I would go on an epic journey around the world to challenge my mind, body, and soul. I would challenge my body by summiting the highest freestanding mountain in the world, Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. And I would take the longest route and the hardest route, and I would try to do it as fast as I could, really. Then from there, I would go and challenge my soul in the foothills of the Himalayas in northern India by meditating alongside a Buddhist monk at a meditation retreat. And then I would go challenge my mind, enduring mind over matter and eating all sorts of the weirdest things that you could even imagine, things you'd see on a Fear Factor show, basically.
What are some examples of what you put down?
Some examples of things that I tried to put down were like, there was something called a dory don. And if you were to see, I looked online, obviously, when I was researching like what I should do, like some weird things that people have eaten around the world. And this, when I saw this, I was sitting next to my brother, and I was like, "Oh, hell no." And my brother was like, "Oh, hell yes."
That's like, exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. So
what is it?
So it's called the dory don, and it's basically the size of like a baby octopus, if you could imagine, like the size of a small coffee cup.
Okay.
And a live octopus dancing basically on like a bowl of like ramen.
No, thank you.
Thank you is right. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But I wanted more live, something called twitching shrimp, which is basically a bowl of live prawns, like just twitching in the bowl. And you
We
just take
deep
them.
fry these bad boys first.
Nope. And raw horse meat and all sorts of other things that I found in Tokyo, Japan. That, this is one of the places that they serve some of this was in Tokyo. So I was like, well, I'm going to go in Tokyo and just get my hands on whatever I don't want to and eat it. So, so I put that on the video and they loved it. And so I went and did all of that. I mean, I just can't believe this was a couple years ago now. I just can't believe 3 trips of a lifetime. I mean, Kilimanjaro, meditating alongside a Buddhist monk and eating all sorts of weird foods in, an electrifying city, Tokyo,
Yeah.
Where some of the best food in the world is. And I'm over here eating like, so I just couldn't believe it. So when I won, I had a few months to prep for it. They said, they bought me cameras. They say, listen, and Dos Equis is such a world-class company. I mean, from the moment I won, the contest was organized, but from the moment I won, I just felt like they had my back. They were supporting me. I felt safe the entire time. I had a travel agency working with me. I had a team, a risk assessment team. I'm like on the phone, like I felt important actually. I'm like, well, this is crazy. So,
you should always feel important.
yeah, but you know what I mean? And then at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, why don't you just have your people call my people? And it was like, my people, I don't even know what's happening. So I might have, but so I had a few months to train or whatever. But when I won in May, my best friends and I were opening a restaurant. We're like in the process of opening up a restaurant as well. Opening a restaurant is one of the hardest things ever. And you don't have any time to do anything but that. So I really had no time to even think about the trip. I had no time to plan for the trip, to prep for to train, anything. So I'm a week away from the trip. We were already opened up the restaurant and it's just a circus. I mean, it's a zoo. People are coming in. They want to support you. You don't know what you're doing. It's our first restaurant. We're just putting out fires here, literally sometimes. And we're just like trying to juggle a million things at once. And all I can try to think about in my subconscious is like, I'm about to go on this trip of a lifetime. So a week away from the trip, I talked to the guys. I'm like, you guys, I have to like kind of prep for this. So I had to go like get all my Kilimanjaro stuff. I had to go and just go do all that. So I had a lot on my plate, needless to say. And when I landed in Kilimanjaro or in Tanzania, I swear it was the greatest trip anyone could ever imagine. And I'm so happy. I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful. As you can see, I talk about this and I just get going because, yeah. So that's why I'm an interesting guy in some regard.
In some regard. When you were telling me about this before, you mentioned that when they sent the camera equipment to you, they had, I believe, 2 pieces of advice for you for the trip. Do you want to share that?
So they're like, okay, Hemad, this is all they had the itinerary for me and everything was set to go. They said 2 things in order. Don't die at the time of your life.
And number 3 was capture as much as you can.
Capture as much as you can. Absolutely. I'm talking to my risk assessment, and like the don't die part was obviously safety is their number one thing. And I was talking to this guy, and as they were planning my trip around like India, around that region in northern India, like the northeast region, there was some things going on, and they were like, you might not be able to fly direct and this and that because there were some bad times over there or something. And I was like, and it hit me. I'm like, wow, this is real. And I was talking to one of the guys there and I was like, what if I like legitimately die on this trip? And he starts laughing because he was like, look, you never know what's going to happen. But if you do, and let's get realistic, let's just say you do. You're not, but let's just say you do. At least you died doing the most epic thing ever.
Right.
And that kind of sunk in, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, let's do it.
I'm in.
Seatbelt, and I'm in. So yeah, it was the greatest time of my life. No stories, no pictures, no videos, no nothing will ever do it justice. I think back to the people I met, to the conversations that I had on the mountain, in the meditation retreat, in Tokyo, at some temples and things like that. with my tour guides and strangers and other travelers that I met and locals. And what traveling does, and doing it on like, this intense, it's just a sensory overload. But you just can't help but to absorb it all. And like when you lay your head at night, every single night, I was just exhausted, but I couldn't go to bed because of this adrenaline. But this like sense of gratitude just overwhelmed me every single night, and really every single moment. Like it was counterintuitive because I was trying to be so in the moment, and I was, but I kept getting these fresh breaths of like gratefulness. I'm just like, I cannot believe, like everyone at home voted for me. All these strangers overseas voted for me in this video. I'm like, you so selflessly, so selflessly.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. English is my second language. But I'm just so grateful for it. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy, right?
It is crazy. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, Hemad sent it to me before, but there is a video that kind of gives a brief recap of his adventures, and it is quite fascinating. But one thing that wasn't in the video that you did tell me about was one of the things you mentioned with meeting the locals and having interesting experiences. You had quite the experience in India that I guess you were worried that you weren't able to fulfill obligation number one of staying alive. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, I'm like sweating thinking about it.
Great way to start your work day. Lots of
adrenaline. Yeah, crazy. So, well, speaking of work day, I am at the family business. That's why you see this beautiful Persian rug in the background. So, just in case people are wondering, like, what's behind him? I never felt unsafe the entire trip ever. I felt oversafe sometimes, except for, ironically, when I was in a car wearing a seatbelt in New Delhi, India. And New Delhi is a very interesting place. If this is what I mean by getting perspective when you travel. You go to New Delhi and the people are beautiful and the land is amazing and it's fantastic. But you will come back home wherever you live grateful for what you have. I mean, I'm talking about, you'll see things that you're like, oh, what? This is like, this is people's lives. And everywhere in the world they have, bad places and good places and whatever, relatively speaking. But this place was just a lot of wow moments. And one of them were in the car driving. I mean, you drive every single day and it's a way of life. I'm in this car and I have this tour guide and I have this professional driver in the front seats, no seatbelt, and we're just cruising. And when I mean cruising, I don't mean cruising. I mean cruising, like jetting. I don't understand why we go so fast. And I feel like
you know why you were going so fast.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
so your circumstance here.
Yeah. So, but so I had a 24-hour layover in New Delhi before I went to northern India to do the meditation retreat. And Dos Equis was like, yeah, we gave you a 24-hour layover. Why don't you get some rest? This is going to be after Kilimanjaro. You can just like stay in the hotel room, catch up on your emails, whatever you have to do, and just kind of let it sink in, and then you'll be going to the meditation retreat. It'll be a good transition. I'm like, okay, great. Well, when I get to New Delhi, I'm like, I still have all this adrenaline. I'm like, I don't want to just sit in a hotel room. So I meet this guy that works the hotel. He's around our age, and he's oh, you're from America? Like, oh, so what's it like? Welcome to India, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, dude, I want to go and explore your city. And his English was pretty good. I'm very grateful for I met this guy at the right time. He was getting off work in a couple hours. His best friend just happened to be a professional driver. And I just happened to cross paths with him at that exact moment. And he was like, I was like, I want to go explore your city. And he's like, I get off in a couple hours. Like I would love to, because they're such prideful people too. They want to show foreigners their land and stuff like that. So we went to his favorite place for lunch. And they drove me around. It was great. So I went to go to northern India afterwards. And then I came back and I had a 12-hour layover on my way back from India to Tokyo. And I said, hey guys, when I come back from the meditation retreat, I have 12 hours. I would love to go see the Taj Mahal. And they were like, yeah, we would love to show you the Taj Mahal. It's in Agra, which is like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours away. And I'm like, okay, well, with you driving, it's like 30 minutes. So, but
Light rail.
exactly. So we're like, okay, with you driving, it'll make me take 2 hours. So I have 12 hours. So I get there, an hour to do stuff. I have 11 hours, 2 hours to get to Agra, you know, and I just did the math. I was like, I think I can make it. I think I can make it back from my Tokyo flight. I want to go see Agra, come back. Or I want to go see Taj Mahal and come back. So we did. And we were driving. And I'm wearing a seatbelt and I'm in the back. We're like going just dead straight. I mean, it's a long drive. We had to stop off at like these resting stations to get food, go to the bathroom, and get water for ourselves. And they had to get water to pour on the tires because they were smoking.
That sounds like cartoon situations.
Seriously, I felt like a cartoon. Like my jaw dropped, my tongue was out. I mean, it was wild. And I just couldn't believe it. I wearing a seatbelt. I'm like, you guys, and they're laughing because they know like this is life for them. This is normal. And it was organized chaos to me, but it was just another day for them. And I'm in the back seat. I'm like, you guys, let me borrow your seatbelts if you're not going to wear them. My mom told you guys if she knew you were driving this fast with her son in the back. We go see the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is gorgeous. Oh my God. But there are so many counterintuitive things and just like so many oxymorons on this entire trip. Like the Taj Mahal is unbelievably damn near perfect. But on the way there, you go through like, it's in this village or this, you know, you go through, you see some poverty and you see some, it's just kind of like the balance. It's just like, I'm just like, oh my God, it really just sobers you up and you're just in awe. But really, really amazing things. And if you don't know the story of the Taj Mahal, it's a really cool story. It's a love story, actually. Do you know the story?
I do.
Okay. So
I'll spare the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, I'll spare you then. But really, really pretty. And I would encourage everyone to go see it. And just the journey to go see it is an adventure in its own. So, you know, you'll see things on New Delhi's road that you're like, what? I saw that you share the roads with fast cars, motorcycles with families on them, carts, like fruit carts, animals, like what? Okay. So that's when I felt
traffic a new meaning.
It gives traffic a new meaning. I heard a lifetime of honking, in 5 minutes of just being in traffic. So long story short, we're on our way back from Agra, from Taj Mahal to go to New Delhi so I can go to the airport and catch my flight to Tokyo. New Delhi traffic, whatever traffic you're used to, it's nothing compared to New Delhi. And I missed my flight to Tokyo by 3 minutes.
Oh, no.
It was just another story within a story of my trip, and we figured it out at the end. But actually, it was a blessing in disguise because I missed it, and the guys felt so bad for me. They were like, you know, could you imagine? You know, you're like
after all that,
this foreigner, this tourist around, and you're like, oh, you'll make it. Don't worry, we'll make it happen. And they tried so hard just to give me as much cool experience as possible, and then we missed the flight because of a little bit of traffic, whatever, a lot of traffic. But I actually got to spend the next day with my tour guide at the time to see how he lived, to go to his home, to meet some of his friends, to go. I'm actually happy I missed my flight because that last extra day that was kind of unrehearsed, that's where all the great memories come in. You know what I mean? It's like it was an amazing day. So, but then I went to Tokyo, and wow, what an amazing place. Seriously. It's just, I'll tell you why real quick. I know I'm going on a rant.
You're fine.
Tokyo.
Fortunately, your rants are interesting.
Okay.
That's why you're here. So
Tokyo is a fascinating city because when you're walking down the street, and I was fortunate to have a tour guide that was older. She was like 65, and she's retired, and she loved just educating people on her beloved city. And we'd be walking down the street, and she'd be pointing at things and just just all these facts and like numbers, and this is the 19 this and that, and this was the famous place where this happened, and I'm just like, whoa, I'm getting like, you know, I'm getting a tour guide, I'm getting a tour all to myself. And we would talk, and when she was like, so what brings you to Tokyo?
Well,
Weird shit. That's
beer.
what I have to do. She was like, wait, what? She thought I was kidding. And she was like, well, you mean you want to go try some of the best sushi in the world? You want to go try the amazing ramen? I was like, yeah, I want to go do all that, but I have to eat live octopus, stitching shrimp, raw horse meat. And she was just like, are you joking? So we did all that, and there's video of that. And but Tokyo, you'll have a multi-million-dollar new high-rise right next to 100-plus-year-old ancient temple. And it's like,
wow.
the tradition of that culture just is woven through the streets in such a tight and prideful way that you can't get away from it. And it almost seeps into you, and you just kind of sit there as you're walking. I mean, it's just unreal, really. I'm just so fortunate to have done that. And of course, I went to the famous fish market, which if anyone's listening that's been to the fish market, you'll know that it's just amazing. And when you talk about pride, these are some of the most proud people ever, because they take such, they're so specific about the fillets of fish that they buy from the fish market to go to their restaurant and serve the customers. They wake up such discipline at like 2 a.m. They go to this fish auction, and that's their life. And they do that with like very intensely. It's like, I would imagine it's like the stock market in New York or something like that. Just there's a lot of chaos, and people want this and everyone wants that, and they're negotiating, whatever. And we got there a little late after all the commotion had passed, but you're walking around. It's like, if you've ever been to Istanbul, with like these bazaars, these markets of like spices and rugs and pottery and clothes. This was like a fish bazaar. You had like little octopus, little shrimp, little squid, and like huge tuna. And they're like filleting this tuna with like a samurai sword. It seems, I'm like, what? It was just a sight that you would never, amazing. I'm so, it brings back memories. I'm going to cry.
Oh,
it was really cool. So, oh man. And Tanzania, Mandie, don't even let me begin on Tanzania. That was actually my favorite part of the trip. It's tough to pick favorites, but the first leg of the trip, because first of all, the people, everywhere I went, everyone was hospitable. The people of Africa, and specifically Tanzania and the village that I was in, again, to see the way they live and not having a fraction of what we have at home, and their energy and their gratitude. I mean, they were grateful. I'm just like, you guys are, I thought my people, I'm from Iran, I thought the Persian people were the most hospitable people on the planet. No, I mean, people in Tanzania, oh my God, I just felt so at home. They went above and beyond. And the mountain itself was if you've never done Mount Kilimanjaro and you don't think you can, you can. There have been 60-year-old plus women that have done it. There have been, 12-year-old kids that have done it. So don't think it was the greatest time of my life. You will go above and beyond every challenge or limit that you think you have. You will surprise yourself, and you will have the greatest time doing it. It was eye-opening, jaw-dropping. The mountain is alive. Like I always joking around, like the more I was going up the mountain, we were like ascending up the mountain,
mm-hmm.
and she just felt like alive, and you can feel this sense of like almost human characteristics that sometimes that the mountain had. And the higher and higher I got up on top of her, the more she wanted me off, which is common.
That's not the sensation that I think you want. How long did it take you to get up there?
So I took the longest route. It was an 8-day route.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it in 5. So when you go up and down in 8 days total. And I went up the mountain and down the mountain in 5 days, which was pretty significant, because even my tour guide was like, wow, like you're kind of a machine. I'm like, oh, thanks. I don't know. I was kind of like, I feel like I was blacked out the whole time, just on this.
What just
And this is
happened?
what I mean by exactly. And this is what I mean by contradiction. I'm exhausted. Could you, like, traveling is, you're tired when you travel. You have jet lag when you travel, and you have to acclimate to the altitude when you're on Mount Kilimanjaro. So everything, like, you're just exhausted. You're hiking for sometimes 6+ hours a day. But I just wanted to keep going. Like, I was just so filled with this adrenaline and gratitude. And I was just like, I love my life. This is the best thing ever. And that really does that could push you far, very far. So it was amazing. And I had the best tour guide. I had the best porters. You think your job is hard? When you're hiking Mount Kilimanjaro and you see the porters, and for those of you who don't know what porters are like a team of like maybe 5 people. For me, it was 5 people that come along with you, and they carry like the bags, your food, and the stuff, the tent and things like that. I had my own bag, my personal bag, and then they carried the group's stuff. Heavier bag, I mean, way heavier than my bag. And they're doing this with the bag on their head and their hands folded like this sometimes, their hands folded in their back. They're doing it with a smile on their face. They're talking to each other. They're laughing. And it's all for you. Now, of course, they get paid. But still, could you imagine like 6 people coming together for you to go have a experience? Unbelievable. And I learned a little Swahili on the way, just to, like, when I saw porters or other tour guides or other travelers even, try to talk to them and just kind of their smile. I don't care how tired you are. When you talk to a porter or see another guy or gal on the mountain, it just rejuvenates you when they're smiling, and because they're all there for the same purpose. You're all there to experience a once in a lifetime chance, or a once in a lifetime thing. And it's just really amazing. So I could keep going, but I won't.
So you brought up they're there for one purpose. What's your purpose? I know we alluded to it at the beginning, but
purpose is it's tough, because I know my purpose, and I'm lucky to know my purpose. And it's kind of your purpose, I think, should be kind of lofty, because I don't think you have to have an exact purpose. I think you have to have something grand that you can gravitate towards. And I think that's where a lot of disconnect is for people, because I know a lot of people my age, your age, or even older, and some younger, they're like, I don't know my purpose in life. And that really can drag you down. And you're just constantly thinking in your head, like, what do I want to do? I want to make an impact and this and that. My purpose, for example, my North Star is I'm trying to become the most interesting man in the world. So that's like my litmus test. Like, I try to make decisions based on, will this make me more interesting? Or is this going to take a step forward into becoming that person that I want to become? Constantly chasing the best version of yourself. It's all about growth, because I think happiness is progress. And, that's why you'll see people that, I'm just giving an example, that are overweight, for example. Like, let's just say whatever weight, and they lose, 50 pounds. And to the, like, America's most obese, country in the world, whatever, but to the normal person, they're still overweight, but they are so proud that they lost 50 pounds and they feel good about themselves. That's progress.
Absolutely.
So that's what's important. Where people, I think, fall short is when they start comparing themselves to other people. Now, you need an element of that, because you have to have something to compare it to. But if you can lean more towards comparing your life and yourself to your life and yourself where you were, that is massively more important and helpful than comparing yourself to the other 30-year-old, 35-year-old that's way more successful. There's something called comparing up and comparing down. And I think you need to do both, because you have to strike the balance of being grateful for what you have and wanting more and achieving more and growing. But survivalists in the wilderness and in the woods and things like that, one fundamental thing that they do is they compare down. And what that means is, when you're sitting there under a tree and it's pouring and you're freezing, and there's bugs and stuff like that, and you have a little meal and you have a little fire, they compare down. when they're weak and morally almost beat, they say, at least I have this little fire, or at least I have this little meal. They compare down. It could always be worse. Instead of saying, oh, I'm sure there's someone out there in these same conditions, but maybe it's not raining. Oh, that sucks for me. You know what I mean? And so that little shift to compare down is huge. And it's just another form of gratitude and having perspective, really. So survivalists survive off stuff like that, little like psychological tweaks like that. So I think we need to do that too. So my purpose, just to answer your question, the most interesting man in the world, trying to become him. And as long as I'm gravitating towards that, if I feel like I'm gravitating towards that, I feel like I'm making the right decision, whether that's, as long as I'm not taking a step backwards. And if you look at life and you look at your experiences like a scientist, instead of like when you make a mistake or when you fail, it's you're learning. Like scientists they don't have an experiment that fails and say that was a failure. They say that was a learning. That was, we can take something that we learned from that and move forward. And you need to think like a scientist that way.
Yeah, I guess if you look at anything you attempt as an experiment, it can't really go wrong because it's just figuring out, well, that doesn't work. Time to try something else.
Absolutely. 100%.
I like that a lot. I had never thought about the comparing down aspect, but I think especially now with social media, comparison is impossible to avoid. And you, of course, only see, unless you're friends with people who whine and post every detail of their day, for the most part, you only see the highlight reels of people's lives. And, that's why you can only compare yourself to yesterday, because that person has completely different circumstances and might have other parts of their lives that are way less satisfying than yours that they're just not sharing with everyone else.
100%. Like if you think about it, and it's kind of, and you actually bring up a good point, and I never really thought about this, but when you look online, you really see either someone complaining, either someone achieving something, or like in the middle. And it's like, I did this today, or I had this, like just updating people on their life.
Right.
And the complaining is just toxic. The keeping people updated with what they ate is irrelevant. but when people tell you that they've achieved something, and to your point, like you can't help but to compare. If you can just like that's a cool, like you should be happy for them. I don't care. Like if they're making that up to make themselves feel good, fine. That's an issue with them. That doesn't, it is what it is. And I'm sure people do that. And I'm sure everyone does that to some degree. But I just can't, like, you just put that in a perspective. Like there's nothing actually online that I see on a day-to-day basis. That's like, sometimes you'll come across things that are very inspiring and like, oh my gosh, that person just wrote a book, or that person just got nominated for this or whatever, or something, and that should inspire you. If you don't internalize that and then it make progress out of that, or it kind of fuels you to do something, then I think you should really take a step back and just, compare down. And I don't know. It's just, I'd never thought about it like that. Like, I don't know. When you read books and see interviews of people that are successful, the one theme that always comes up, and I read quite a bit and I try to stay updated with people that I admire on a large scale in terms of business and marketing and entrepreneurship and otherwise. They always say you are the sum of the 5 people that you associate with most. Everyone has a form or a form of that. They all say that. And that's so massively, like, it's so massive in your life. It's so true, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I always joke around with some people that I like to give a hard time. I'm like, hey, right now you are bringing my average down. So stop.
Time to step it up.
Right. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I like that for sure. And I think when comparing, like a couple of things that I've learned recently in the comparison game, because this is definitely one of my bigger downfalls, is one thing is that there's enough success for everyone. So just because somebody else is winning in some way or another doesn't mean that I have to take second place or that, I can't win to, you can't win to. Like, we can all
Absolutely.
win, and that's what we should be doing. And then the other part of it would just be that, oh, I just lost train of thought.
But that's a good point, though, that there's enough success for everybody. That's
Right,
so true. But I think even before we, like, that's a good mentality to have. That's a good mind frame to have. But even before we, like, what is the success you want? I
right,
swear, if you actually wrote down what success means to you, I think you'll surprise yourself, because people have this idea of success, and they look at, like, someone and they say, wow, they are successful. But you need to deconstruct that. What
right,
makes them successful? Because like you're saying, I guarantee you, what might seem like success, they could be internally just so unhappy. And vice versa. Someone that you think is down or that isn't progressing the way, maybe they are so happy, and you should, and
right.
that's successful. So um, learn what success means to you. That is so important, because it's like trying to achieve a goal, not knowing the goal. It's like,
Right.
what are you doing? You're just running around in circles,
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, the podcast that posted this week, the interview, she talked about a book called The Firestarter Sessions, which is about finding your purpose. And she talks about how the author said that when you look at success, it's really, how do you want to feel? And then, like you said, deconstructing it. Well, what makes you feel that way? If you and I both wanted to be the most interesting man in the world, I would, of course, require surgery, but that wouldn't be a competition, because what's super interesting to me and what's super interesting to you might not be the same thing. And, some of the things we could do together. But
100%.
and the other thing that I was going to say is, a lot of times when you look at something, and I don't know if you ever have moments when you've been drinking haterade, but a lot of times I think when people are haters, it's not because you're looking at something that you could never do, but you see someone doing something and you realize that you are fully capable of doing that same thing, and you just didn't, for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And I
Yeah.
think that's a lot harder than looking at, Diana Nyad, who swam across from Cuba to Florida. Like, that's something that I don't think I could ever do, don't really want to. So I'm just like, good job. But when it's
Right.
other stuff that it's like, that's totally within my scope of abilities, and I just didn't, then it's kind of stings a little bit more.
Absolutely. That's one of my, that's exactly how I feel. When I look at, like, stand-up comics,
Mm-hmm.
I like to think I'm funny sometimes, and I like attention often, and I like to, like, what you like the spotlight. So what I liked public speaking in college and in high school, and now. So I'm like, that combines everything. And all you're doing is you're getting on a stage and you have a mic, and yeah, there's a big light in your face, and you're just saying jokes. Anyone can do that. And I'm not saying, like, anyone can think of good jokes, but, like, we kind of admire these people, and it's like, you could do that if you tried. Maybe not as well, but you should give it a shot, actually, because people are so deathly scared of public speaking and stuff like that. It's crazy. People are more afraid of public speaking than death itself. Did you know that? Like, that's a statistic. And I'm just like, what?
That's crazy.
And I've tried stand-up comedy before, and it's terrifying. But it's amazing. It's exhilarating. But my point is, like you're saying, is when you're looking at these people, like, I could do that. But, like, yeah, like a physical feat, like Michael Phelps winning, I don't know how many gold medals. Well, I can't do that.
Right.
I can eat Subway like he does, but I cannot swim like that. So the fact that when you see someone that you can, like, oh yeah, I could do that. It does sting a little bit more. But then you have to ask yourself, but do I want that? Do I want to do that? Do you know how much work that person has done to do that?
Right.
Like, I look at authors and I've heard, actually, that book that you mentioned, I heard that's a good book. A similar book probably is the book Start With Why.
Okay. And actually, that same interview recommended that as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Simon Sinek is the author's name, and you should look into him if you're listening to this and you haven't heard of him before, because he has one of the most viewed TEDx talks ever, somewhere in the millions, and he talks about all great companies and all great people, if you look at like the major significant players in the world, companies and people, they all start with why, and then how, and then what. Where the other companies and the other people that aren't so successful or whatever that means to them, start with what and how, and then sometimes don't even know their why. So you always hear when like you're doing a business proposal or something, what's your mission statement? Well, it's cliche because it's true. And you have to so finely tweak your mission statement. But what's your mission statement of your life? You know, like it's the same thing. But if you start with why, the rest of it really kind of, it's a ripple effect. And then it just gets so much easier because then you don't have to tell people what. They already know what when they learn your why. You know what I mean?
Right. And your what comes naturally because, you know, you're seeking whatever it is that your why is. What other books would you recommend?
Boy, I hated reading growing up. I thought it was a waste of time and I wanted to constantly be active instead. Mm-hmm. But ever since I started reading things that I enjoy, like things that kind of tweak the mind, I have just been really trying to read as much as I can. I would recommend, it depends what you're looking for. If you're business minded and if you know you want to create time and enjoy your life and you still do enjoy business, I would do the 4-Hour Work Week. That was a game changer for me.
I
Seth
finally
Godin.
Started that.
Did you?
Yeah, I know you recommended it the last interview. So
the last 7 interviews. Yeah, you're gonna love that book because
I do so far for sure.
It actually gets to the heart of I think what a lot of people think they want, and that's time. Like it talks about time being the new currency. The new rich is people that are time rich. And how do you become time rich? The opening book, it starts off saying you don't want to be a millionaire. You think you want to be a millionaire. You want to live the life you think a millionaire lives. Well, you think a millionaire right now is on the top of a mountain, like skiing down and laughing with his buddies and her buddies. But no, they're probably in the office working their ass off. So do you want that? No. You want to enjoy the time that you have. And that book, in very practical ways, sets up a mindset where you can really wrap your head around some of the key things like, you know, like how important is money? Can you outsource some of the things that are just mundane tasks that you do every day and so on and so forth? That's a good book. If you're a marketing person or branding, Seth Godin is a really good author. He just makes such complex ideas simple. Okay. And he just makes you question like, oh my God, why am I overcomplicating things? And he's all about like going after a niche market instead of becoming the Walmart of your industry. Because
I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's huge. yeah. And because when you're that big, you lose quality, you know, and you try to do everything. But you know, you're going to do way more work when you try to sell $1 item to 1 million people or 1,000 people, let's say, instead of selling $1,000 item to one person. You know what I mean? Sure. And that going after a niche is it's much easier actually. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it actually is in many cases.
That's more 4-Hour Work Week action where
that is more 4-Hour work. Yeah, absolutely.
Gains from 20% of your customers.
Exactly, the 80-20 rule. Yep. I'm gonna throw some other names out there. If have you ever heard of Stoic philosophy?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't. That's not a book. That's just the concept, right?
That's just the concept. But there are some books around that, around Stoicism, and it's an amazing philosophy because it talks about just like it talks about all the things we've always heard, being in the moment, appreciating life for what it is, knowing that whatever happens to you, there's a purpose for it. You don't have to know the purpose. There's an amazing quote by, I don't even know this. I'm not going to even try to remember who it was by, but it was saying something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the hard part about life is that if you live it backwards, it'll all make sense, but you can't. You have to live it forwards. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if you were 95, when you're 95, everything in your life will make sense.
Sure.
And you have to have faith in that. But the hard part is having faith in that, because you're not you're starting it now to 95. So it's a really cool mindset and way of thinking. But Ryan Holiday talks a lot about stoicism.
I've heard good things about him, and I believe I listened to him on a podcast interview of someone else's, and
Yeah.
saved his name to check out. So
yeah, he's really, he just digests an absurd amount of reading. And he wrote a couple books. One is Ego is the Enemy, and the other is The Obstacle is the Way. So The Obstacle is the Way, real quick, is a very stoic thought, because he's saying this is an obstacle. Like, imagine back in the day, the Roman Empire, there was a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And this was never meant to be a published book. It was a journal and a diary of, at the time, the most powerful person on the planet. And this was during his military campaigns. Could you imagine it's his notes, like, to try to get into his mind at that time is amazing. And he wasn't a dictator. I'm sure there were elements of him that were, like a dictator, but he was writing things like, he would pay attention to, like, the creases in the flowers and the smell of the loaf of bread. Like, imagine writing this down when you're killing, when you're trying to take over more land. I'm like, what? So reading that, so the obstacle is the way. When you're trying to, let's just say, take over another piece of land, and there's a big stream in the middle, or there's a big river or whatever, water in the way, that's an obstacle. But the obstacle is the way. How can you take advantage of that? And that's what that talks about. Ryan Holiday's good. Boy, I don't know who else. If I think of some more, I'll let you know. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I was going to compliment you too. You've been the most on top of it so far of everyone, as far as sending everything, links and photos.
Oh,
so
good.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I try.
So one question that I love asking, and I already know the answer because, like we've mentioned, this is not our first attempt at this interview.
Yeah.
But scale of 1 to 11, if little Hemad could see 30-year-old Hemad now, how pumped would he be?
Oh, 1,100. I mean, every single day. Like, when I turned 30, people were like, "You're getting old," and I'm like, "Dude, I feel young."
Absolutely.
Like, every single day I feel younger. I know that sounds so stupid, like, oh my God, this guy is just so full of it. No, seriously, I'm just so excited. Like, I don't know why or how I got this mindset of, like, I'm just so like, I don't know. It's so refreshing to hear other people talk like this and read about stuff like this. And it's just kind of consumed me. I'm 30 years young. And
absolutely,
of course, when I look back, I would love to have some of my years back, but at the same time, I have so much more to live. And yeah, so he would be pumped. Little chubby Hemad would be pumped for current chubby Hemad, like
with the unibrow.
with the unibrow. The Hemad with the unibrow and eating, having a Big Mac in his hand would be super pumped for 30-year-old Hemad in front of a Persian rug drinking yerba mate tea.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So where are you headed, as far as you know? What's coming up for you?
I'm headed to the top, Mandie. No.
Now it's the metaphorical mountain as opposed
right.
to Kilimanjaro.
Exactly. Where am I headed? Boy, I'm just on this constant chase of knowledge and growth. As long as I'm growing and progressing, I'm a happy camper. And learning. I mean, obviously, that's what learning is.
Sure.
So I'll never not be a student. And I think with that kind of framework, you can't not be excited for life. Where am I headed specifically in terms of, like, business?
Yeah. What are you up to? What are you working on?
Sure. I have a website where, so I'm in a family business where we sell handmade Persian rugs, and we import them from all over the world, and we sell them. We have 2 stores here in the city, and it's a family business. My grandfather hand repairs all the rugs, and it's an amazing blessing because these rugs are pieces of art The way they're woven is unbelievable. The workmanship that goes into them is ridiculous. And every time we talk about them, every time we educate customers or people about them, every time we clean them, we repair them, we sell them, we do it with such pride because it roots back to our culture. It's the art of our heritage. So it's in our blood. So as I'm doing that, and it's not something I'll do forever. I think I'll always have some sort of attachment to rugs just because it's just a piece of art that you either like it or you don't. And the more you learn about it, the more you like it. So I'll always have some sort of attachment for it. And it's a family business. So, it's family. But I've launched a website where I teamed up with this photographer and interior designer, and her and we sell bold, beautiful tribal rugs and mid-century modern furniture. So that's one thing I'm up to right now. Let's see what else. My best friends and I, we opened that restaurant in our city, and then they've gone on to open up a couple more, and they're doing an amazing job. And I think there are plans to team back up with them in the near future, actually. But I always keep my options open. That's one thing that is interesting, because at any given moment, I just be like, you know what? I'm just going to take a one-way ticket to South America, and I'm going to explore. Now, obviously you need money for that, and that's why we're working so hard. But you can actually travel pretty lean if you're smart and you use your resources. Because what is there? How can you spend your time better than traveling? I mean, I'm sure there's a few things, but really, I mean, it's like I said, an overload of your senses, overload. And what more do you want? You want to go explore. And then when you explore, you gain perspective. When you gain perspective, you gain gratitude. When you gain gratitude, you want to give. You want to live a life of service. And I think that's just very meaningful. That's very powerful. So I'm always literally a click away from a one-way ticket, which my partners are like, dude, you got to relax. We got to do this. And, but yeah, that's about what I'm up to for now. Just trying to, you never know. I mean, my brother and I were very serious about getting on The Amazing Race. So do not be surprised if we get on The Amazing Race. I think we have a good shot. I am also very optimistic. So that'll be fun if we could do that, and, just trying to do interesting things, really.
Absolutely. I love it. Where can we find you online? And I know you sent me the links, but let's just say someone's listening is like, I have something interesting for Hemad to do. Sure. Where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. You could find me on Facebook, my name. You could find me on my Snapchat and my Instagram and my Twitter. They are all the same handle. So that could be in the links. And I'm really starting to think about getting into blogging a little bit more. Like I used to write, I still do write a little bit, but I haven't put stuff out there for the public in a little bit. So I might start doing that. It's just so therapeutic. And you never know who's reading it. You never know what someone can take a little piece of it and just it could mean something to them. So why not,
Absolutely. Do you care to spell your name and your handle for those who are listening and might not access the show notes?
Sure. So my name is Hemad. Okay. And my last name is Fadaifar. Okay. Hemad Fadaifar. You actually pronounced it perfect, better than my mom ever has. And then my handles are H, and then my last name, Fadaifar. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So we touched on the previous interviews, and it's a little bit on context because we didn't have as great of a segue this time. But since the purpose of the show is to encourage people outside of their comfort zones, a lot of times I would say looking at doing different things like submitting a video, opening a restaurant, going on the adventures you were on. The moment you were about to get in that car and cruise down, I'm sure you felt some fear. How do you push past? How do you get into fearless zone?
Oh boy.
Or is that what you do? Or do you just kind of recognize that you're fearful and
Yeah.
push through somehow.
So no. You know, there are a few universal things, and fear is certainly one of them. Like, it doesn't matter what color you are, what size you are, what gender you are, you will experience fear. And what Seth Godin, an author that I like, he talks about dancing with fear, because you can't not experience it. Like, that's impossible to not experience it. So you experience it, and you recognize that, but then you have to learn to dance with it. Like my Buddhist monk was telling me when I was in, I love how I can say, like, my Buddhist monk.
My Buddhist monk. I have a monk speed dial, and
like, exactly. Oh man, my Buddhist monk was telling me when I was meditating. I mean, think about it. He was 3 feet away from me, giving me, like, just incredible. I'm so grateful. He was saying, when you're sitting there still and quiet and meditating, when you're doing that, and I was asking him, because we had dinner, I was like, oh my God, I get, like, my face will itch, or like my back will ache, or my knees, or whatever. And I'm like, what do you do? Like, do you ever itch, like scratch your itch? And he was like, when you become in it enough, when you become, it's all about detachment. So you recognize that your cheek may itch, and then you dismiss it. You recognize that your knee may hurt, then you dismiss it. Because the moment you try to ignore it or fight away from it or combat it, that's when you give it more attention. So just like fear, you have to recognize it and then learn to dance with it or dismiss it or whatever. So and I'm big about getting outside of my comfort zone. So Tim Ferriss actually talks about this in the 4-Hour Workweek. If you were to take a piece of paper and make it into 3 columns, and on your top, your main sentence would be like what you want to do, or what makes you scared, or what your fear is. And you can write down the first column, like 10 things that, and you want to double check exactly how he does this, but 10 things that could go wrong, like that realistically could go wrong. 10 things that, what would happen realistically if those things happen. So one thing that could go wrong, like starting a new business or quitting a job, I wouldn't make that much money, right? I would go from X amount of $1,000 a month to X amount. Mm-hmm. And then that would stem to, I would not be able to pay my bills and this and that. And then the third column is, what could I do to minimize the middle column from happening? So it's a fear exercise. Okay. And to actually think about the worst case scenario. What is the actual realistic worst case scenario of whatever you're fearful of? You want to get on stage and do stand-up comedy? What's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, you could maybe faint from anxiety. Yeah, that's bad. So how can you minimize that? Maybe you can drink water. Maybe you can take deep breaths, whatever.
Sure.
But what's more realistic? Well, you're going to get nervous. People may not laugh like they didn't for me. And and you will feel stupid. You'll feel judged. You'll feel bad about yourself. You're still alive. Like, the sun will still come up in the morning. If you can just really just ground yourself in the realistic, like what is possible to happen, you actually won't. It's actually not that bad. And one thing, and I mentioned the other time we tried to do this, weaker people have done harder things.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up again, because I would have forgotten, and I really loved it last time.
Yeah, it's one thing that stays with me every time I'm in a tough spot, or I have to make a difficult decision, or I'm fearful of something. Think about, like, you're a very strong individual, and anyone listening to this probably is too, or trying to become that more so than they are, because for whatever reason. I guarantee whatever you're going through, and this is a bold statement, but I guarantee it, that whatever you're going through or about to go through, somebody weaker has gone through something harder. And it's the same thing as, like, if one person has done it, it is not impossible.
Right.
You just have to, like, really anchor that and ground yourself in that mentality. Then it won't be as bad. And if you go, like, say you're fearful, like, I'm afraid of heights. Well, if you do the number one thing you're afraid of, imagine then every possibility is open to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're afraid of heights, you go skydiving,
Now
you're not afraid of anything. You know, it's like,
right.
well, so I hope that answers the question.
It absolutely does. I like it. It's kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. And you also gave a meditation tip while you're at it. So that's a nice added
Detach.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's something that I'm still working on. And
yeah, that's why Buddhist monks shave their head, because your hair, it is the number one, what is it? The number one vein, one of the most vain things that we are attached to as human beings.
Sure.
So when you are ready, when you have ready to really be dedicate your life to that life, you shave your head. And that's one of the final symbols of I have detached from all things that are vain and so on and so forth. So I just saw a cool documentary called the monk with the camera or something like that.
Okay.
Amazing documentary about this guy who had it all. His dad was a diplomat. He could have whatever he wanted. And he was an amazing photographer. And he had this life-changing moment when he went traveling, which a lot of times happens. So go travel, everybody. He dedicated his life to becoming a monk. He moved to India and he got blessed by the Dalai Lama and so on and so forth. Just a moving documentary. And another documentary that I think is just amazing, just for fun, just because we're talking about this real quick. I don't even know how we got here, but you talk about fear. I'm talking about documentaries.
I asked for books. If you're not a book person, this is perfect.
Yeah. Man on Wire. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay. I was crying. I'm a little softy, but I was tearing up because back in the day, this guy, it's a story about a man, I think from France, who tight rope walked across the Twin Towers.
Okay. I think I'm familiar a little bit with the story, but not the documentary.
Well, the documentary is just amazing. This guy is a character. And imagine back in the day, I don't remember how long ago it was, but the Twin Towers had just been built. Okay. And they were living in Europe. They flew back here and back and there and back to try to figure it was like a bank robbery times a trillion to try to pull this off. And It goes in such detail of how they pulled it off. And you watch that, and it's like, what am I afraid of? What can I not do? That's so hard. So, that was a good documentary. And I don't know. But yeah, so Dance with Fear.
Check it out. Dance with Fear. Great tip. Any other advice you want to pass along?
Oh, I'm not like a Persian fortune cookie, Mandy, but because you asked. No, my main thing is just be grounded in gratitude. Just put things into perspective as much as you can. Because even though your brain is an organ, you have to treat it as a muscle. And just like fear and just like gratitude and just like perspective and just like being kind and just like whatever, you have to constantly train it to do those things. So you just have to practice at it. So that's it.
I love that. And that makes it really accessible for anyone who wants to improve in any specific way.
Yeah.
Yes. Allen Iverson would not approve, but
right.
Poor guy. Just made fun of for years over that statement.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting words before we close out this wonderful take 3?
Take 3. Hold on. There's a guy. Someone's here. We're about to open the store. So my parting words would be, thank you. You're doing amazing things. You should be on the podcast. Someone should be. If you ever get interviewed, I want to do the interview because you're bold. You're making bold moves.
Oh, thank you.
If you ever want to do that, I'll be doing the interview for you. No, thank you. I'm humbled that you even asked me to do this. So I appreciate your time and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you so much. I know everyone's going to love this and expect some new social media followers because I'm sure people want to see the upcoming adventures for you.
Cool. Follow along. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I don't know about you, but just listening to Hemad talk about his adventures makes me want to book a flight and have one of my own. This is definitely an episode that you're going to want to check out the visuals for, whether it's on YouTube or in the show notes on my website, because Hemad sent some awesome pictures from his trip and they are super exciting and inspiring. Additionally, as has been the pattern, I have a giveaway. This time it's actually from a group of sponsors. If you follow my blog regularly, you've probably seen a video that my fiance and I made showing how we propose to our bridesmaids and groomsmen. The people who donated the gifts for the groomsmen also donated an extra set for a lucky winner. So you'll have to go check out exactly what we gave to them and what we did. The easiest way to get to that is our wedding website, which is really just a selection of blog posts from my blog, and it's BRICE2meetyou.com. So www.BRICETOMEETYOU.com, and the last post will be how we propose to our bridal party. And you can see what the lucky winner who listened to Hemad's episode will win. You can go to Hemad's episode to see those photos, as well as to see how to enter at www.mandiem.com/episode15. So www.mandie.com/episode and then the numbers 1 and 5. That's where you can enter our competition to win the same gift that our groomsmen got, as well as where you can see, like I said, Hemad's amazing photographs from his adventures. You can also sign up to be on the list so that you're always notified whenever a blog post comes up, and you can hit the contact button if you know somebody who has done some bold moves and you want to nominate them to be a part of it. So I would really appreciate it if you did that. If you've been enjoying this, please share this with your friends. Please leave us a nice review on iTunes, and please subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss one. Thank you so much for listening. On Friday, I have a great challenge from Hemad, so stay tuned for that. And as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.